Haven't seen the film yet? This very quick spoiler-free section is for you. It's not good. Pretty awful, in fact. It's incredibly tone-deaf, the writing is all over the place, it's completely directionless, Arnold somehow found a way to look even less invested in these proceedings. Seriously, Arnold Schwarzenegger doing a bad performance of an emotionless machine? How is that even possible? Courtney and Emilia Clarke are just so terribly wrong in these roles. The whole material begs to be executed via a far more appropriate age rating, and my god, for what promises to be a crazy time travel adventure, it's damn near astonishing how the whole thing feels about as exciting as waiting for an old lady to finish crossing the street. Terminator Genisys isn't just a huge letdown, it might be the worst film I've seen so far all year. And it's outright insulting when you consider how the only reason we're here talking about it is because Paramount want to force 2 more reboot sequels out of this franchise without first and foremost even trying to bother making a working movie in and of itself. It's a convoluted, disappointing waste of time that I do not recommend you pay money to see, and hey, is anyone getting flashbacks right now? Anyway, now for the real spoiler-heavy review. Okay, so why is it so bad besides what I already mentioned? Well, we can spend an eternity picking this piece of shit apart for its various gigantic flaws, and my oh my is there a lot to unpack here, but the main reason Terminator Genisys transcends from being bad to outright insulting is because it has the very nerve to even charge you to watch it. If last year's X-Men Days of Future Past was the ultimate example of how to best implement the Star Trek alternate timeline sequel baiting shtick into a pre-established franchise, then Terminator Genisys will go down as the absolute worst. Not long after seeing the film, I really struggled with my feelings towards it because I just couldn't crack what it was trying to do. And then it all suddenly hit me. The only thing that Genisys wants to do is excuse more Terminator movies. It's a cynical brand-managing vehicle seeking out only to retroactively move things around so a door can be opened for them to pursue sequels that wouldn't have made sense with the already established timeline prior, whilst also being a cheap excuse to revisit the old and make fans think they're paying homage to what came before, when clearly the script indicates that anyone in the crew that honestly did respect the original 2 movies was fired before getting to touch the final screenplay. Folks will claim that its ultimate downfall lies within an absurdly difficult to follow, overly convoluted time travel plot featuring multiple Terminators, characters jumping into the past and future, and even creating an alternate timeline, but another director might have been able to take that madness and at least use the whole ordeal to contrive some ridiculously bonkers action set pieces and turn in an entertaining watch all the same. Or, like I said in a previous video, perhaps the intention really is to just have everyone mess about with the timeline and misdirect us so the film can pull one final gotcha and reveal a far more intimate story about our characters and themes. Pull back the curtain to reveal a more human narrative about what separates man from machine. But no, this whole thing really is just a confusingly handled, half-assed, mismanaged, unfocused, poorly plotted blueprint that Paramount have plastered up on screen here so they can set up what currently looks to be the least exciting trilogy since the Hunger Games. Say what you will about the other Terminator sequels, at least there's a narrative in both, various new honest takes on the material, and attempts to offer up action that thrills. This does not. Oh, were you looking forward to the fight between the older T-800 and the one from the original? Were you excited to see the T-1000 running around in 1984? Did the helicopter chase in the trailers intrigue you? Why would you want to see any of that stuff when there's so much boring time travel exposition to dump on screen? What most angers me about Genisys besides its franchise maintenance is that it sets up so much promise as far as an action movie is concerned you even wonder how it'd be possible to cock it all up, and every fight sequence is spectacularly poorly directed, always shot in extreme close-up, never giving off any sense of scale and feeling horribly claustrophobic. Never mind that sequences such as both Arnolds facing against one another comes down to a goddamn 30-second pushing contest. It doesn't even pursue a different take on the events of the original movie, since the writing dictates that they time travel to another point within the first 45 minutes. But anyway, context. It's the ultimate deciding day in the war between man and machine in the year 2029, and John Connor, now played by Jason Clarke, is currently leading one last final assault on Skynet to put an end to things once and for all. In one last-ditch effort to defeat humanity, Skynet sends a Terminator to 1984 to kill Sarah Connor, and shortly after the Resistance discover they're too late to stop it, Connor decides to send Kyle Reese, who's now really buff, well-nourished and toned because that doesn't completely go against the whole point of the character, back to protect the vulnerable waitress completely unaware of all that's about to come to fruition. Despite the dialogue sounding like it's been written by a 5-year-old, the opening 20 or so minutes in the future does provide the film with its best moments, primarily because Clarke is actually quite good in the role of John Connor. It seems the writers actually thought this part through, and it honestly does feel like what probably would have happened before Michael Biehn landed in 1984 in the original movie. And then this is when things start getting complicated. When Kyle arrives in the past, this time he quickly finds that all is not what it appears. Not long after he bumps into a T-1000, whose presence is never fully explained, Emilia Clarke soon enters as an alternate timeline version of Sarah Connor, who instead of being the unassuming civilian we all remember, is now a warrior trained from a young age by a Guardian T-800 sent back by We'll Figure This All Out in the next one, and after defeating the first T-800 Terminator from the original film, are you still following? The three now have to work together to fend off the T-1000 and, pay close attention, with a time displacement device Sarah and Arnold have built in their underground hideout, her and Kyle decide to travel to 2017, remember we're in a different timeline now, to stop Judgment Day. Instead of, just staying where they are in 1984 and doing all they can to stop Skynet's creation then, rather than travelling forward to a time where Cyberdyne has already built an entire industrial complex they now have to blow up, but whatever. And then even though they manage to fight Terminators, travel in time, get into shootouts and have to avoid the police, this somehow still manages to lead to an incredibly slow-moving midsection chocked full of terribly written sequences of characters pouring their hearts out through pseudo-important backstories that don't matter to give the illusion of depth, and even more prominently discussing the clearly not actually that integral to the plot mechanics of time travel. And you guessed it, the whole thing is quite amazingly dull as f***. And it's doubly insulting when you think about how the actual time travel on display here makes zero sense whatsoever, yet the film keeps pretending like it does or that it even cares. If you've seen the second trailer, you'll also know that Jason Clarke shows up soon after they arrive to reveal that he's been turned into a human Terminator hybrid that has targeted them both for termination. And no, the film's not kidding, we really are supposed to believe that this is the good guy John Connor from all the movies turned bad now, with zero context to allow us to properly invest in it. Does he have his own free will? Is Skynet controlling his actions? Is there any of the real John Connor still in this guy? Have Skynet actually sat him down and convinced him why it's a good thing that all humans should be Terminators? Who knows, we're never told. And then even when challenged with the obvious logical counter-argument from Sarah saying, "You can't kill us, we're your parents," his following response reads, "Says who?" And yeah, that's about as perfect an encapsulation of how much this film just doesn't care as you could make. Oh, and Doctor Who's Matt Smith shows up as the face of Skynet because God forbid an audience be able to fathom that an emotionless calculating computer system is a threat without giving it a physical presence someone can punch. It sounds like I'm making this whole thing up, but it really does play out that mind-numbingly tedious and convoluted. Time travel exposition this, underwhelming fight sequence that, more uninspired, poorly directed action here, more sequel bait there. Believe it or not, I'm not asking that the movie makes sense. Oh, would I like a strong, serious, R-rated, no-nonsense, smart Terminator movie that was actually about something that didn't insult my intelligence? You bet I would. But it was apparent from day one that Genisys just wasn't going to be that movie, and so I elected to accept that and trust something enjoyable could at least be salvaged along the way. I've loved a lot of perfectly stupid high-budget B-movies before for their action, and I could easily have been made to, at the very least, appreciate that aspect about this one. But Terminator Genisys is the series at its absolute worst, seeking to do f*** all besides extend the life of this once much smarter and engaging franchise into a newer, dumber trilogy, throw in extraneous plot twists into the narrative for shock value, and shoehorn a ton, and I mean ton, of fan service into every scene, regardless of logical consistency. In fact, one sequence I think best illustrates this is between Kyle, Sarah, and the John Connor Terminator. Just as they're all having a conversation, John just out of nowhere starts giving the whole "I can't be bargained with, can't be reasoned with" speech that Reese gave in the first movie for no reason whatsoever, and it makes zero sense in this context. What even compelled him to say that? It's just thrown in there for reference purposes. And you know what? I hate films like that prey on the enthusiast that only shows up to see branding in a sequel, that thinks we'll be satisfied that they threw in that one line in there despite feeling out of place and the rest of the film having a piss-awful script. And I hate it even more when I see fans turn around and applaud them for it. We owe it to ourselves to demand better quality content. Movies like this are quickly becoming all that is wrong with Hollywood today, and I sincerely hope that the negative reviews manage to keep these inevitably poor sequels from ever seeing the light of day. Hasta la vista, baby. Cheers for watching, guys, and as always, if you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel.